Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here, my next Avatar top 10 video. This one's going to be my top 10 fights from Avatar and Korra. And yeah, obviously last two times were the top 10 Avatar and then top 10 Korra episodes. And I'm going to reveal what the next top 10 video is going to be at the end of this video. But yeah, let's get into what this video is about. Top 10 fights from the show. From this universe, basically. And yeah, this is a big part of this universe because I really do think the bending, the fight scenes are what brought a lot of fans into this show in the first place. With that, before you knew how good the characters were and stuff like that, what ultimately drew most people to the Avatar universe was the bending, the fighting, and just the way all that choreography was actually done. So I think this show is very well known for these amazing fights. So that's why I think this is definitely worth doing a top 10 video for. So yeah, in terms of my list, talking about it overall before revealing it to you guys, you know, I'm reasonably happy. I found it a pretty hard list to make just because, you know, when you kind of look back on the series, it's kind of like, okay, there's only like a select group of fights that you would really consider like putting up even to be considered for this list, and then there's just kind of like, okay, what if it is just a one-on-one fight? Do you include the kind of battles where it's kind of like a group against an army, or do you include these like little skirmishes where it's very short? I think I have a decent balance, and then as for the balance between Korra fights versus Avatar fights, I think overall I have like more Korra fights than Avatar ones on my list, and maybe I probably have missed out on a fight that maybe you guys in the comments will let me know about. But overall, I'm fairly happy with my list. I'm pretty confident in saying that, you know, if I was to make this list again in a couple of months, maybe some of the positions would change. Maybe one would be off, one would be on. But for the most part, I don't think the list would be like that drastically different. So yeah, that's the intro. So let's get into the list with my number 10 best fight from the Avatar universe. So yeah, number 10 is Zahir versus Tenzin from K311 The Ultimatum. This is basically our only battle between airbenders in like the entire series, basically, in terms of like they just give time for two airbenders to really have a fight. This was big because it's really Tenzin's main fight in the entire series. In a book so focused around the concept of new airbenders coming back, having, you know, Tenzin, the one kind of, you know, original airbender from, you know, that original group, be the one to defend all these new airbenders from this guy who is one of those new airbenders but doesn't really care for the Air Nation as a group and is actively using them as like bait and stuff like that. So there's a lot of story stuff based around this fight. It's a battle between master airbenders coming from different backgrounds. One, a traditional airbender who's learned the correct styles and stuff like that. Another one is a good martial artist who's kind of self-taught in airbending. And the styles come across really well in this fight, and just the way how Tenzin has the advantage. That the Red Lotus are set up as these awesome fighters, but Tenzin has the clear advantage over Zahir and is beating him and is about to kind of deliver that final blow almost until the other fights don't go their way. Like Kaya loses to Minghua, Bumi loses to Ghazan, and suddenly it's 4-on-1, all of the Red Lotus against Tenzin, and that's what brings him down. I think this is a really good fight in terms of the actual fight moves, the techniques, the sequences we see, plus the story and kind of emotion behind it. So definitely worthy of a spot on my list. But next we'll move on to number 9. My number 9 is moving over to Avatar The Last Airbender. It's from 218 The Earth King. It's basically like the pretty much start of that episode. It's basically Team Avatar decides they're heading to the Earth Kingdom Palace, and they just blitz through the entire basically Earth Kingdom Royal Guard to get to the palace. It really is one of the only times we really see Team Avatar just go for a fight and just like together work well and just kind of blitz through opponents. It's one of the only times where they don't separate the fights. They don't have like someone square off against someone else. Uh, someone's doing something different. They're all involved in this fight, and it's just constantly moving forward. You see a lot of kind of awesome kind of movement techniques where like there's this awesome move where Katara makes like an ice bridge and like jumps over a guy, and as she lands, she does this like water whip thing and knocks a guy into the river. There's some really cool sequences. Then Toph just takes command. Toph and Aang take command on the kind of stairs up to the royal palace and just demolish everyone with their earthbending. It's a really strong fight, and one of the only times in all of Avatar where you have such a one-sided battle where just like this team just runs roughshod through everyone. And it's one of those things like without that scene, what scene do you really cite for like here is the scene where together Team Avatar are just awesome? You don't quite have that because usually they're all separated. Like in the invasion, everyone goes their separate ways in the fights and so on. So this is a important fight for sure. So next up, number 8. Number 8 is Toph versus her Earth Rumble opponents from The Blind Bandit, the episode she's introduced in. Specifically, what I'm talking about here is the scene towards the end of the episode where she reveals to her parents how strong she is and kind of helps save the day after everyone's captured and just takes on all of them at the same time. It's her big demonstrating to her parents scene how good she is. And I think this is just an amazing scene in terms of getting over just how powerful a character is at bending. And for Toph, who is that character who kind of has that throughout her entire run on the show, basically, that her big thing is she's blind, but she's incredibly skilled. She is basically the best earthbender in the world. And to give so much of the episode to this massive kind of fight scene as she just destroys all these other people who are also really good at earthbending. You have, you know, like characters like the Boulder and like Zinfu and stuff like that, that she's just defeating with very little effort, and it gets her own style of earthbending across, the praying mantis style. It gets across the technique she uses to sense people through earthbending. And kind of the way her lack of sight and the way she actually sees actually gives her the advantage in this fight over everyone else. She purposefully creates this kind of smoke screen so that no one can see where she is, because she can see in it, because she doesn't have normal vision. So there's some really great stuff involved in this fight, and just in terms of one fight scene to get over how powerful a character is, I think this is probably one of the best ones we have in the entire show. So that's definitely worthy of my number 8 spot. But let's move on to number 7. Number 7 is Korra and Lin versus the Lieutenant and Chi Blockers from 106, K106, and the winner is. This is pretty much the first really big set piece action scene in the entire Legend of Korra series. This is kind of what we've been building towards. Like the early parts of book 1 are, you know, it's slow, it's building up Amon as a character. The characters are involved in little fights here and there, but this is the first really, really big fight, and it's really good. It's on top of the amazing looking pro bending arena. It's Toph and Lin Korra and Lin fighting together for the first time after kind of having just kind of had this understanding. You have the lieutenant involved, and throughout the entire fight you have these awesome action scenes. Like Korra is an amazing kind of character to use in these fights because she's so physical and so good at fighting. And Lin is roughly the same, and her, metal cables allow for a lot of cool movement stuff in the fight. But throughout the entire fight, you have the fear of, is the glass going to crack? Are they going to fall through? There's people constantly jumping around the place. You see the cracks beginning to form. The music is awesome. And then eventually it happens, and you have Lin make the decision to save Korra rather than having like the perfect opportunity to take out Amon, who's just on the airship just above. Really cool action set piece that really just starts the series, and really starts book 1 getting into the really dramatic and intense parts. So an important fight scene and definitely one of my favorites, so that's why it's number 7. But next up is number 6. I feel I'm cheating a little bit in my 6th place choice, and it is the Colossus versus basically every hero character in the entire show from K412, the Colossus, second last episode. Um, the reason I feel I'm cheating is because it's effectively like a whole episode that I'm choosing here. But really, that's what this episode is. It is a combined effort fight scene against this giant mech suit. And I just think it's wonderful the way all the characters just have these various sequences in which they try and take it down. You have like the Earthbenders attempt to do it, so you have Lin, Su-Yin, and Bolin like topple a building down on this thing. You have Korra lead the Airbenders in this this giant kind of torrent of air to try and take it out. You have kind of Milo lead the Airbenders in trying to kind of obscure the windows at the start of the episode. You then have Korra with this awesome waterbending move to eventually kind of stop it to give the hummingbird suits a chance to actually take it out, and some other stuff happening as well. Korra does some Avatar State stuff as well. So I just love this in terms of a variety of fight scenes, getting to see some really big bending because it has to be big to take down the Colossus. It was just a really cool scene, you know, that. And I think that it's interesting on this list that I don't have to just choose Bender versus Bender fights. That this can be on my list as well. This mech suit with a giant laser against a bunch of Benders that are really powerful. So I really think this is a really cool sequence, and that's why it makes my list so high up. But yeah, let's move on to number 5. Number 5 is Wan versus Vaatu from Beginnings Part 2, K208. I've made no kind of a secret about the fact that I loved Beginnings, and especially Wan and Rava as characters, so it makes sense that the big fight that is kind of essential in the entire series in terms of this is the fight that led to the creation of the Avatar effectively, has to make my list. And it is a really good fight. You know, you have Wan showing Rava how much he's not going to give up. You then have him desperately trying to defeat Vaatu kind of on his own. He puts up a really good fight but can't quite do it. He has to put his life on the line and have Rava kind of merge with him throughout the fight, but it's still kind of not working. His body is beginning to kind of become overloaded, and eventually when Vaatu's about to win, you have the kind of desperation move, and he kind of touches the kind of joined portals, and that joins the two of them together. Like together they make this decision to kind of save the world, to kind of join together, and from there you get probably one of the most epic sequences in all of Avatar. Just the moment where the Avatar is kind of there for the first time, and Wan and Rava just together annihilate Vaatu and seal him in the Tree of Time. It's just such a great fight to set up this story that, like, the last harmonic convergence, this is what happened. This is kind of what Korra you need to do this time round, and how it doesn't quite go to plan. But just really cool fight in terms of just the visuals, especially with Studio Mir's slightly different style of animation they did on the Beginnings episodes. Seeing the way the elements look in this kind of woodblock style animation looks really awesome. And then just the magnitude of the scene and how important it is for the universe in terms of this is the fight where the Avatar started and the first real time we see the Avatar like win a fight. It's just amazing for me, so that's why it's number 5 on my list. But let's move on to number 4. Number 4 is Azula versus Zuko, their Agni Kai from the Book 3 Fire finale. This is just such a powerful scene. I think that's the perfect word to describe this fight. It's brother versus sister. It's been built up for like 2 whole seasons, basically, that it's ultimately, this has to happen, a fight between these two. And since their first fight, you know, early on in Book 2 from now, what's really happened is that you've had Zuko heavily develop. He's gone from being kind of completely driven by this kind of drive to capture the Avatar, this kind of like kind of evil intentions. but now he knows the true way of firebending taught to him by the dragon. So it's kind of dragon firebending against this special blue firebending that Azula has, which makes just the visuals look so amazing. The music is really stand out in this scene, even though it's not like booming and kind of bombastic like in a lot of the other big fight scene musics are. This one's kind of more quiet, but it gets across the intensity of the fight that it is between two family members. It is for who's going to become the next Fire Lord, and just overall, it's just incredible. Just the way, let's not forget, Sozin's Comet is involved here. So these are two fired up firebenders. Pardon the pun, but just the scale of the bending in this fight is amazing. Like some of the shots here, when you just pan out really far away, and the bending is still big, and you have like shots like I think the two of them just kind of do fire punches at each other, and they just kind of like stand like this, and like this just wall of fire is like in front of them because they're only blocking like half of it and they're letting half of it go by. It's just incredible, like the amount of people they would like hurt if this was not like two firebenders facing each other is incredible. So yeah, just super memorable fight, and I think most people will have to have this fight super high up on this list. It's just very few times in Avatar or any other show that couldn't really capture a fight that well. So that's why it places so highly on my list. But let's move into the top three with number three. Number three might be a surprise to some, but I think I've said this enough times before that you guys probably had an idea that this would appear highly on my list, and that is Korra versus Tarlok from K108 When Extremes Meet. This fight just really has a bit of everything that I kind of want from a fight scene. It's got great action, there's interesting setup beforehand, it kind of ends in a big moment, a big reveal, and just is super memorable. Like I know a lot of people like tend to like not remember book one that much, but this is just a fight that I will never forget just because of how incredible it was. Just it ends up being right up there with probably one of the most violent fights we get in the entire Avatar universe, because you actually see both characters get hurt and like go for the kill in this fight. And it really comes across more than a lot of other fights, that even like some of the really more intense ones I'll mention in the next two, that wow, they were going to kill each other. Like Korra gets like cut in this fight when Tarlok does his kind of machine gun kind of ice shield thing, and then Korra's just like chucking whole walls at Tarlok and like blowing up the whole kind of Tarlok's office, and like just her intensity in this fight is incredible, you know, the whole half-baked Avatar thing. Because the one thing you need to remember about this fight is that it's in the episode When Extremes Meet, which is all about the rivalry between Korra and Tarlok that's been building that whole episode and even a couple of episodes before that. So it all comes to a head here. The two are both basically angry at each other and ready to fight, and Korra's about to like burn Tarlok's face off until he reveals he can bloodbend. So great setup, amazing action in the fight itself, amazing reveal, and just this is Tarlok's kind of finest moment as a villain in the series, and it just definitely has to be in my top three because of that. But let's move into the top two with number two. Number two is Aang versus Ozai from the Book 3 Fire finale, the big fight that whole show was building towards. Again, it had the build, like you were just waiting for this to happen. Sure, like Ozai wasn't the most interesting in terms of a character, but they really did get across how threatening and incredible he's going to be when powered up by Sozin's Comet, and just it was a worthy final fight just to see, you know, Aang, basically a fully realized Avatar here, facing off against someone like a really powerful Fire Lord enhanced by Sozin's Comet, and again the scale of the bending, just how incredibly crazy this fight was in terms of like, I don't know how they managed to animate this on just a TV budget. It feels so movie-esque in terms of just like how big in terms of scale it is, and how incredible everything is that's happening. And again, there are important story beats that happen in the middle of this fight. You have the whole issue of going in, will Aang kill Ozai or will he not? And you have that moment pretty early on in the fight where he has a chance to redirect the lightning straight back at him, but he doesn't because he doesn't want to kill Ozai. And then elsewhere in the fight, that gives Ozai the advantage. And just when he's about to kind of deliver the final blow, Aang kind of smashes his back off the rock and unlocks the Avatar state, which is another really cool continuity plot moment. And once the Avatar state's in play, Aang has control, and again, the Avatar state was about to kill Ozai, but Aang comes back out. Ozai's about to kind of cheap shot Aang. Aang defeats him with energy bending. Just a lot of stuff happening, a lot of really cool kind of reveal sequences, and it just all together made for a really good final battle, I think, and definitely worthy of being so high up on my list. But there is one more fight that I think is better than it. So let's go on to number one, my favorite fight in the Avatar universe. Yes, number one is Korra versus Unalaq Vaatu / Unavaatu from the Book 2 Spirits finale. This one, again, I feel a little bit like I'm cheating in terms of I'm effectively choosing a fight that takes place across like 3 episodes. Like, really, that's what this fight is. Like, it starts off as just Korra versus Unalaq, and then kind of Vaatu's kind of out of the picture for the first part. Then kind of he's released, and he joins with Unalaq, and you have Dark Avatar versus Light Avatar, and then the fight transitions into you know Rava's taken out, and then Korra has to kind of go to the Tree of Time, and then it's kind of Spirit Korra versus Unavaatu. I just love the way that this fight evolves and changes over time, and that you get the classic one-on-one bending fight. You get the kind of more powerful Avatar versus Avatar fight. You get the kind of spiritual fight at the end. It just captures a bit of everything that kind of Avatar has in terms of fights. And yes, as I said, maybe it's unfair to choose so many minutes of a fight scene as my number one, but for me, this had it all because it linked into with so many story elements about the fact that it was Korra versus a member of her own family. It was the Korra against a person who thought her to be more spiritual. Korra using the techniques he thought her to defeat him in the end, and just Korra really showing how spiritual she has become. And you have an important moment for Jinora at the end of the fight. You have the really emotional moment as Rava is ripped out and kind of destroyed, and the loss of the past Avatar. So much happening here, and I think just for some final thoughts on my list in general, I think it really shows that what I like in a fight is that it's not just good in terms of it's 2 really good combatants fighting each other. What's the reason why they're fighting? Does anything of note happen in the fight apart from the fact that they're fighting each other? Are there story elements behind why they're fighting and stuff like that? And I think a lot of the ones I've chosen on my list here have that there are emotional reasons why they fight, whether it be because they're family members or because they're 2 airbenders. It's the first time we're seeing that happen, and stuff like that. That these fights are all important and unique in their own way. So that's my list of top 10 Avatar fights. Definitely in the comments, I really want to know, do you agree with my list, disagree with some of the stuff I said here? Are there any fights I may have missed out on, or even if there's a fight that you think should have made my list, ask me in the comments why I didn't choose it, and I'll give you a reason. So yeah, that's been this week's top 10 video. I hope you enjoyed it, but now to announce what next week's Avatar top 10 video is going to be. It's going to be top 10 minor characters in the Avatar universe. So again, it's going to be across both shows. This is a video to highlight the characters who aren't the main ones. So you're not going to see any Korra, Aang, Sokka, Kataras in this video. This is where the cabbage merchants of the Avatar world and stuff like that are going to get their dues here. So they're the type of characters you're going to see me talk about in this video. The characters who aren't in the show a lot, but are just as interesting in my opinion. And I definitely think I have a pretty interesting list. There's probably a couple, if you guys have watched a bunch of my videos, that you probably already know are going to be on there. But either way, I hope you guys are going to watch the video next week and enjoy it. But yeah, until then, that's been this video. Thanks for watching, and bye.